I carried their lives, day after day, no pause, no room for, "I'm tired." I forgot my own, until I broke, and only then, I finally heard the silence, the one that held the sound of something I'd been missing. My own life. Sometimes all it takes is one wrong step, and your whole life unravels. This is my story, the one that changed everything. And I'm ready to tell it. I can't say for sure when it started. Maybe the first time I stayed late at work to cover for a colleague who had an emergency with his kid. Or when I transferred money to my cousin without asking questions, because he was in trouble again. It might have begun when I started saying yes, out of habit, listening, helping, solving, fixing, over and over again, until it wasn't a favor anymore. It was just expected, normal, for them. I own a gym. Not a fancy chain or anything. Just a place I built from scratch. An old basement with cracked walls and rusty pipes. The first barbell I bought secondhand. My first client showed up thanks to a blurry photo I posted on a forgotten forum. But I gave it my all. I wanted to build a space where people could grow. Not just stronger physically, but mentally too. And they came. People started believing in what we were building. They called me Mike, who believes in us more than we believe in ourselves. Funny thing is, I never believed in me. My friends, my family, they were always there, as long as I was solving something for them. "Mike, can you stop by Mom's? Her shelf broke again." "Mike, please come over. We had another fight. I can't be alone tonight." "Mike, can I borrow some cash till Friday? I swear, it's the last time." And I said yes. Every time. I showed up. I sent the money. I picked up the pieces. Over time, I stopped being a person. I became a tool. A steady backup plan. Reliable Mike. Always on. Always reachable. No one asked how I was. No one noticed when I was tired, quiet, or off. They all had their dramas, their chaos, their needs. I was just available. I remember the exact moment I broke. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. That day was long. Training sessions back to back. One client sprained an ankle, the office printer exploded, a pipe burst in the locker room. At night, I sat on the floor of the empty changing room. Just sat. Eyes closed. Nothing in my head but white noise. My phone buzzed, 21 missed calls. Nephew. Neighbor. A client. My ex. I flipped the phone face down and didn't answer. For once. And the next morning? Silence. No one showed up. No one knocked. No worried texts. Just quiet. Then, after a few days, the guilt messages began. "Where have you been? Wow, didn't think you'd ghost like that. Seriously, Mike? Not even a heads up?" And that's when I realized something that hit me harder than anything I'd ever lifted. They didn't miss me. They missed the things I did for them. Asterisk, asterisk. So I started pulling back. Intentionally. Quietly. I disabled notifications. I set an out-of-office reply on my gym email. I said, "No." I didn't explain. And the scariest part? No one came looking. I was only ever important while I was useful. The weirdest part about disappearing is that the world keeps spinning without you. That's what got me the most. I thought someone, anyone, would notice I wasn't around. That maybe someone would text, call, knock on my door. But no. Not even the people I had sacrificed sleep, money, and time for. The gym ran on autopilot for a while. My assistant coach, Leo, took over the beginner sessions. Most of the regulars barely noticed my absence. A few even said, "Oh, Mike finally took a vacation?" I smiled politely when I heard that. What was I going to say? "No, I'm just testing whether any of you give a damn." I started spending more time alone. I'd walk the city in the evenings with my hood up, earbuds in, just observing. I watched people talking, laughing, hurrying home. I felt like a ghost, present but fading. I stopped answering calls. I stopped offering help. And something inside me started hardening. But here's the catch. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was numb. Tired. I'd built my identity on being the guy people could count on. So without that, who was I? One night, I came home to a cold apartment. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Not because of the weather, but because no one's waiting for you. I dropped my keys, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared into the dark. That's when I remembered something one of my clients once told me after a tough set. Asterisk. You give us your energy, Mike. But what recharges you? Asterisk. Back then, I laughed it off. Now, that question felt like a punch in the chest. The next morning, I showed up to the gym before opening hours. Just to sit. It was empty, quiet, smelled like iron and chalk. I walked between the racks, ran my hand across the worn-out bench padding. This was my second home. Maybe my only one. Then I heard the front door creak. I turned, and there stood Leo, my assistant coach. Didn't think I'd see you before 9, he said. I didn't reply, just gave a slight nod. He stepped in, paused, and added, They miss you, you know. The kids especially. Your Tuesday class just stares at the door sometimes like you'll walk in any second. I swallowed hard. They've got you. They like me. But they look up to you. Something cracked in me then. Not loudly. Not like a shattering window. More like ice melting. Slow. Quiet. Real. Leo looked at me and said, Take your time. But don't disappear. Some of us aren't just here because we need you. We're here because we respect you. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than emptiness. That moment with Leo stayed with me. Not because of what he said, although his words hit hard, but because of how he said them. Calm. Steady. No judgment, no pressure. Just presence. And maybe that's what I'd been missing all along. Someone who didn't need anything from me, except for me to be okay. Over the next few days, I came to the gym earlier. I didn't train anyone. I didn't coach. I just sat, sometimes cleaned equipment, sometimes just watched. At first, no one said much, but they noticed. I'd see little nods, brief eye contact. One girl from the evening class left a protein bar next to my desk with a note. Asterisk. Good to see you back, coach. Asterisk. It was strange. I felt like a stranger in a place I had built with my own hands. And then came Tuesday. Tuesday evening used to be my favorite. My youth class. A dozen teenagers. Loud, awkward, full of energy, full of chaos. Most of them came from difficult homes, rough schools, tough lives. But here, in this space, they showed up. They pushed themselves. They respected the weights. They respected each other. That Tuesday, I walked into the gym during their session. They froze. For half a second. Then one of them, Sam, the skinniest, loudest of the bunch, grinned and shouted, Hey, coach is alive! The room broke into applause. Some kind of clumsy, chaotic cheering. Someone threw a towel in the air like it was a victory flag. And I felt tears build behind my eyes. I turned away, blinked hard, cleared my throat. All right, I said, voice low. Don't get soft on me. Show me your deadlifts. They got to it. And for the next hour, I stood at the edge, watching form, correcting grips, giving thumbs up and nods. It felt right. Not like before, not as someone they leaned on, but as someone they welcomed. After class, Sam hung back. He hesitated, then said, Coach, you know, when you weren't here, it kind of messed with us. Like, if even you vanish, what chance do we have? I looked at him, unsure what to say. He was barely 17, but there was something raw in his eyes. Not teenage drama, something deeper. I don't need you to fix everything, he added. Just don't leave, okay? That night, I sat in the office long after everyone had gone. I didn't scroll my phone. I didn't answer messages. I just sat with that sentence echoing in my head. Asterisk. Just don't leave. Asterisk. Maybe I couldn't be everything to everyone anymore. But maybe I could still be something. I started showing up again, not out of duty, not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to. That was new. Strange, even. The gym had always been a place of structure, sets, reps, routines. But now, it became something more. A place where I could rebuild myself, one moment at a time. No loud declarations. No big comebacks. Just small steps. Real ones. One morning, I came in early and noticed the lights were already on. I walked in and found two of the younger guys, Eric and Malik, practicing technique before school. They looked surprised, like they'd been caught doing something illegal. You guys okay? I asked. Eric shrugged. We just wanted to get a little better. I smiled. Then let's work on your form. We trained for 20 minutes. Nothing fancy, just cues, corrections, encouragement. But afterward, Malik said something that stuck with me. You being here makes it feel real again. I didn't respond. I just patted his shoulder and nodded. But inside, something shifted. I was starting to matter again, not as a fixer, not as a lifeline, but as a presence. As me. Later that day, I reopened my calendar. I reactivated my coaching schedule. But I did something I'd never done before. I blocked off time for myself. An hour every morning. No clients, no calls. Just space. Not to give, but to breathe. The responses were mixed. Some people were excited. Coach is back. Others were passive-aggressive. Wow, it took you long enough. A few disappeared altogether. And I let them. I didn't chase anyone. I didn't explain. Instead, I focused on those who showed up with intention, not obligation. The ones who wanted to be here. The ones who made space for me, not just what I could do for them. Weeks passed. The gym grew louder again. Laughter, clanking weights, focused energy. It felt alive. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in it. I was part of it. One Friday evening, Leo sat across from me in the office. We were both tired, the good kind of tired. Chalk on our clothes, calluses in our hands. You know, he said, you look different lately. Worse, he smirked. Lighter. I didn't answer, but I felt it too. Like I dropped some weight I didn't even know I was carrying. That night, I stayed a little longer. Cleaned up the racks, turned off the music. Then I stood in the center of the gym and just looked around. Not as a business owner. Not as a coach. Just as a man who had come back from silence. And I realized something simple but true. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like victory. Sometimes, it just looks like showing up again. At some point, I realized I hadn't just come back to the gym. I was slowly coming back to myself. Not all at once, not completely. But those pieces of me that used to get buried under other people's needs, they were starting to reconnect. And that's when something happened I didn't expect. A letter arrived. A real one. In an envelope. No return address. It just said, "For Mike." Inside was a handwritten note, female handwriting. I recognized it immediately. Eleonora. My ex. The one who knew how to ask for help in a way that felt like obligation. The one who left when I finally said no to bailing her out. Again, the letter was short. No apology. No reflection. Just one line that stuck with me. Asterisk. You were right. I got used to you like air. But when you disappeared, I couldn't breathe. Asterisk. I read it 5 times. Not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't figure out why she'd sent it. Was it an attempt to come back? Guilt? A trap dressed in poetry? I put the letter down. I didn't reply, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for being silent. I felt like I had the right to my own quiet. That evening, I told Leo about it. He listened, like he always did, without interrupting. And then he said, "People who get used to taking, they don't know how to lose. 'Cause to them, you're not a person. You're a habit." I smirked. He nailed it. "What are you gonna do with it?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "I'm just gonna keep living." And I did. Those days, I started noticing more and more people around me. Not the ones who drained me. The ones who showed up. The ones who asked, "How are you?" and actually cared to hear the answer. The ones who didn't vanish when I didn't reply right away. One of them was Kirill. A quiet kid, 20 maybe. Kept to himself, didn't talk much. But when he touched the barbell, his eyes lit up. You could tell. He wasn't here just to train. He was looking for ground beneath his feet. One night after class, he stayed behind and said, "You know, Mike, I used to never stick around anywhere. But here, it feels like I can. Not just because of the weights, because of how you look at us. Like we're not broken." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. But inside, something clicked. I realized I was needed. Not for what I gave, but simply for being there. And that's when another truth hit me. Sometimes, it's not about who left. It's about who stayed. Asterisk, asterisk. One evening, after locking up the gym, I stood outside and just listened. City noise hummed in the distance. Cars, voices, some music playing from an open window across the street. But in front of the gym, it was still. Quiet in a way that felt earned. It hit me how different this quiet was from the one I used to live in. The silence of isolation. That old silence felt heavy, like it wanted to crush me. But this one, it was peaceful. Honest. The kind of quiet that wraps around you instead of pushing you away. I leaned against the door and thought about something Leo had told me the week before. "You can't fix everyone, Mike, but you can stop letting them break you." That line stuck. Like a tattoo under the skin. I used to believe that strength was about how much you could carry. How much you could hold up before breaking. But now I know. Real strength is learning what not to carry anymore. The next day, I did something that felt small, but wasn't. I reached out to a guy I hadn't talked to in over a year. His name was Daniel. Used to be my closest friend. Until I became the friend who always listened, always helped. And he became the one who always took. We drifted apart quietly, with no fight. Just distance. I sent him a message. "Hey, hope you're good. No expectations. Just wanted to say, I'm still around, and I hope you're doing okay." I didn't expect a reply. He answered in 5 minutes. "Mike, man, I've been thinking about you a lot. I'm sorry for how I disappeared. Can we talk?" We met that weekend. It wasn't dramatic. Just 2 guys sitting on a bench in the park, catching up. At one point, Daniel said, "You always showed up for me. And I just let you carry the weight. I didn't even realize until you weren't there anymore." I didn't need an apology. I just needed the truth. And I got it. That night, as I walked home, I realized something else. I wasn't rebuilding my old life. I was building a new one. Carefully. Honestly. With people who saw me not as a lifeline, but as a man, strong, yes, but human too. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel used. I felt seen. One Saturday evening, after everyone had gone home, I stayed behind. I stood in front of the mirror, not to check my form or posture, but to actually see myself. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see a tool. I didn't see someone holding the world up on his back. I saw a man. Tired, yes, but real. The front door creaked open. "Sorry, are you still open?" a voice asked. It was Emma, one of the newer members. Quiet, serious, always focused. She rarely spoke about herself. "Almost closed," I said. "But for the right people, there's always a bit of time." She smiled, stepped in carefully. "I know this is weird. I just needed to be somewhere that didn't ask too many questions." I nodded. We sat down on the bench by the wall. No background music, no distractions. Just the air and the space. "When I first came here," she said softly, "I thought I just needed to move. Burn stress. But there's something different here. People don't ask what's wrong like they expect a short answer. They just look at you and stay." Her words landed deep. Not because they were profound, but because I recognized them. That's who I used to be. Not the rescuer. Just the one who stayed. The one who held space. Emma stood to leave. Before walking out, she looked at me and said, "Thank you for not changing. Or maybe thank you for changing just enough to make this place feel calm again." After she left, I sat there for a long time. No lights. Just silence. And I realized I was becoming something new. Someone who could still give, but not fall apart in the process. The next day, the gym was buzzing. Morning strength class, afternoon teens, evening beginners. I was coaching again, really coaching. Watching forms, correcting posture, pushing limits. But when I said things like, "2 more reps, control your breath," or "You've got this," I heard those words echo both ways. For them, and for me. Then something happened that made it all click. Caleb, one of the youngest kids, maybe 8, always red-faced and nervous, came up after class. No words. Just a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing. Me, standing in the gym, wearing my shirt with the logo. Underneath, in block letters, he'd written, "Mike is the strongest, even when he's quiet." I smiled. Maybe that's the truth I've been searching for all along. Strength isn't noise. It's not sacrifice. It's not saving everyone. It's returning, quietly, and choosing to stay. Asterisk, asterisk. A few weeks later, we decided to host an open day at the gym. Nothing fancy, just a small event to bring people together. Free classes, snacks, music. An excuse to reconnect, to remind ourselves why we started all this in the first place. The morning of the event, I came in early. The smell of fresh rubber mats, chalk dust, and old weights filled the air. It was quiet, but it felt alive, like the gym was holding its breath, waiting. Leo walked in carrying folding chairs. "You good?" he asked. "Surprisingly, yeah." He smirked. "Big day." "Not nervous," I said. "Just present." People started trickling in. Regulars, newcomers, parents, even a couple of old faces I hadn't seen in years. One of them was Nick, a guy who used to train here before he moved across the state. He walked in like nothing had changed, hoodie, grin, fist bump ready. "Still the same place," he said. "Still got that Mike energy." I laughed. "Don't know what that means, but I'll take it." The day went smoothly. We ran a few demo classes, did some lifting challenges. Caleb won the kids' push-up contest and got a protein bar bigger than his head. Emma led a small mobility circle and surprised even herself by how confident she sounded. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I stood near the back just watching. not directing, not managing, just being there. And then it hit me. This wasn't about getting back to who I used to be. This was about becoming someone better, someone whole. After the last guests left, I helped Leo clean up. As we folded mats and collected water bottles, he glanced at me. "You feel it?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Feels like home again." He nodded. "Because you let it be. Because you stopped carrying everyone else's weight and finally stood on your own." That night, I didn't go home right away. I sat on the gym floor, lights off, leaning against the wall. I closed my eyes and breathed in the silence. Not the lonely kind, the solid kind. And in that stillness, I whispered something I hadn't said out loud in years. "I'm proud of you, man." And I meant it. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. People didn't stop needing things. I still got calls. Still got texts with, "Hey, can you help me out?" Still had days when my energy felt low and the weight of the world threatened to crawl back onto my shoulders. But the difference now? I knew the difference between being needed and being valued. I learned to say no, without guilt. I learned to pause and ask myself, do I have the space for this right now? And if I didn't, that was okay. I didn't owe my exhaustion to anyone. The gym became more than a place to lift. It became a space of balance. People showed up, yes, but they also gave back, in effort, in gratitude, in presence. I watched friendships form, quiet conversations happen after workouts, small nods exchanged between strangers who never would have spoken outside these walls. And me? I wasn't just Mike the coach anymore. I was just Mike. Human, imperfect, growing, still strong, but no longer carrying everyone else's weight to prove it. One evening, Caleb ran up to me after class with another drawing. This one had more detail. Him, Emma, Leo, even a few other faces I recognized. And there, in the center, was me, smiling. On top, he'd written, "Mike didn't save us. He stood with us." I don't think I'll ever forget that line. Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Not being the one who rescues everyone, but being the one who's still standing when they learn to save themselves.